Hi, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com, and thank you very much for joining either the podcast or the YouTube version of the podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you took just a second to subscribe either on your podcast app or in YouTube. It doesn't really do anything. It's not going to send you any emails. It's just going to show up more often on your feed, and it does me a lot of good in terms of getting more exposure for this work I do to support dads. I'd also like to invite you to come to my page, GreatDad.com/go, if you'd like to discuss more about any of the issues that we are covering within the podcast, especially if there's any way I can help you to be a sounding board in your own struggles to be a dad and to be there for your family. So take a look at that. It also includes a link to my course on gratitude, where at GreatDad.com/gratitude with a offer to take that course for free. So see you in a second. Hi, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com, and I'm here with my weekly series talking about modern fatherhood. And I've got a little bit different take today. We're going to be talking about books and writing books, and maybe your chance to write your book. And so I've got a gentleman here who's published already 60 novels or 60 books, and is an acquisitions editor at a New York publishing house, and has a lot of expertise in how to get going on that. So welcome, Terry Whalin.
Paul, great to be here with you. I appreciate this opportunity.
Well, I was really intrigued. You sent me this book, 10 publishing myths, some of which were like, I don't know if that's a myth, but about like everybody can be a New York Times bestselling author. I have no fantasy that everybody can do that. But some of the other ones were really interesting though too. I think you kind of have a perspective that most people could become a published author in this modern world we live in. Would that be correct?
Yeah, all of us have stories and experiences, and maybe we're reading kids' books to our kids, and we think, "Hey, I could write one of those."
Yeah.
And so they decide to do one, and so I do think there's a lot of people out there that have have ideas and things they want to get captured and in print. One of the best ways, I think, I mean, where I started was in the magazine writing world, and I think that's still a great place for people to begin the whole process. I mean, let's face it, Paul. Books are complicated. They're long. they take a lot of words, and in the publishing business, for example, if you sell 5,000 copies of your book during the lifetime of the book, that's a good number. But
That is an amazing, just that statistic I think is really amazing, because I think most people think like, if I'm not going to be able to sell millions, it's not even worth getting up in the morning.
That's
I mean,
right.
publisher.
And on the magazine side of things, though, it's very easy to write a magazine article, 1,000, 1,500 words, your story, and get that out to 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 people out there.
Yeah.
So you can reach way more people with your magazine work than you ever can, and you're working with a smaller piece of writing is the thing I like about it. So a nonfiction book is, what, 50, 60, 80,000 words. That's a long piece of writing that you end up working with, where a magazine article can be simpler. And most magazines, from my experience, are taking personal experience stories. And hey, all of us have strange, different experiences. We think they're different anyway in our lives. So I always encourage people to write those down, capture the dialogue, capture the moment, and then go back and fix it. Because the thing I like about magazine writing is that, you learn how to write for a particular audience. You learn how to have a good title, a good beginning, middle, and end, all that kind of stuff that's important no matter what you write at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that idea of like capturing those stories, because everybody has those things where you go to a cocktail party, you talk to somebody, and they tell you this just fantastical real life story, and in the moment you're like, oh my God, I'll never forget this story. And a year later, you want to tell that story again, and you just have like the vague outline of it, and you can't tell it in half the compelling way that you knew at the time if you had written it down. But so before we get into the books, I'm interested in what you said about the magazine articles. Is there anything, if somebody was like, I used to write articles or personal stories for a local parenting magazine in the Bay Area here,
Sure.
and I always wondered, like, is there a rights issue that you should consider when you are working with a magazine where you maintain some rights so that later on I could take those 8 personal remembrances and put them together in, along with 20 other things and make that into a story? Or do they own the rights forever? And
Well, it all depends on what you sell to them at the end of
right,
the day, I guess. And that's a very good question. I typically sell what I call first rights, and so I write that right on my manuscript. I'm
first rights.
selling them first rights. That means I'm not a lawyer here, but what way I understand it, that means after they print the article, then those rights return to you. They only have the ability to use it the first time. And
Uh-huh.
so then you can take those articles and you can use reprint rights. So you can sell it again to somebody else, or you can use it as a chapter in your book. There's a lot of different ways to do those things. And one of the best ways for anybody to learn about magazines is most of these magazines have their own guidelines as far as what their editors are looking for. And so they've told you right there what they need. So if you pitch something to them that they're looking for, you're more likely to get them at least
Right.
interested to respond to you rather than just shooting them something totally off
Well,
the
there,
wall that they're not interested
there
in.
used to
So
be that book with that or annual book, Poets and Writers. Does that still exist? Something like that?
right, it still exists, and I mean, it's pretty expensive if you go buy it, but every library in the country has it. So,
Yeah.
go to your public library and go in the reference section and find it and get what you need there. Yeah,
Yeah, for anybody who hasn't heard about it, it used to be a big, thick, like dictionary
it
type
is.
book, and it had all the magazines, and to your point, it had everything what they were specifically looking for. You don't want to write a home decorating article for a sports magazine. It's just some of that, but it digs in deeper so that you really can hone down what they are specifically looking for right now.
And a lot of us in the publishing community, we move around a lot. So
Yeah,
the editors change and the addresses change
don't
and
use an
all
old
that.
copy.
So find a current issue,
Yeah,
and
right.
use that for your search too.
Right. So if you've moved beyond that, or let's say you already have a manuscript for a book in that 50,000 to 80,000 word issue. I know one of your myths is saying, because it is all the rage right now, is self-publish and give it on Amazon and let them do the work for you. But you say that's a myth, that you think there are more ways to skin a cat.
Well, yeah. I mean, at Morgan James, for example, where I work, Morgan James Publisher, we're a New York publisher. Amazon is a big customer of ours, but we
Sure.
really encourage our authors not to use the word Amazon because you can imagine bookstores believe, right or wrong, that Amazon has destroyed their business over the years. So they're not really interested that you have an Amazon bestseller or you have 50 Amazon reviews. Now they'll care that you have 50 reviews, but they won't care that you have 50 Amazon reviews. And
Right.
so we discourage them from using that word. And Amazon is only 24% of our overall business at Morgan James. So the way I look at it, sure, you can publish with Amazon, but you're missing 76% of what we do for the book out there. I mean, we're in 98% of the bookstores in North America, including the brick and mortar stores. So we sell at Target.com, for example.
Right.
So, if you really want your book to get out there, that's one of the keys, I think, to be as broad as possible.
Well, is Amazon now is publishing with Amazon? Is that kind of synonymous with self-publishing? Because I guess when
It,
I read self-publishing, I was thinking like going down to the local copy store, or a better version of that, and making up my own book and selling it that way. But is it really Amazon now that does most of that?
Well, there's a lot of companies that do self-publishing. I mean, some of these self-publishing companies will actually, upsell you all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I've met authors that have spent, $20,000 to self-publish their book, which is, really ridiculous. And, but there's a lot of good stuff in self-publishing, don't get me wrong, but there's also a lot of junk in self-publishing. So you have to really be concerned about how your cover looks and how the interior looks and the copy on the back and just all those kinds of details that people forget. They don't even think about. They just shove it out there and see what happens.
Well, is that something that you should be aware of? That, I mean, I know in everything that I do today, I coach, I do this podcast, I have 3 websites, I've got a lot of stuff going on, and every one of those domains, everybody is coming at me with a $5,000 program, a $10,000 program just to get you going. We'll sort of guarantee you'll be a success in 3 months. Are any of those? I mean, are there some of those that are really good services that if I invest $10,000, $20,000 with somebody, or are a lot of them just kind of what you make of them kind of thing?
Well, I always encourage people, no matter who they publish with, to go to Google, type in the name of that publisher along with the word scams, complaints. Now, every publisher has people that don't like them. So, I mean, even at Morgan James, I mean, we've been around 20 years. We've sold 20 million books. So, we have people that don't like us too out there. And whether it's true or not true, what they've written, and it's out there forever. But if you do that with a publisher's name and find pages and pages of people complaining,
that's good.
That should be a red flag to you, not to go with those kind of people. So you just have to do your own homework, I guess, is what I'd say at the end of the day. I mean, sure, there's some really great companies that are doing great work, and I mean, I believe I've worked with Morgan James for 12 years now, so I believe we're one of them that are getting books out there really into bookstores. But let's face it, I tell people all the time, it's easy to make books. Selling books, now that's another issue.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm thinking that, and maybe my paradigm is very old. I worked at Random House for a while, and that's a different kind of game, I think, than are there 2 different types of public publishing houses, I guess is what my question is. Are those who kind of like walk you through the steps and get your book out versus those like a Random House that they're mostly waiting, either they have a authors they know, or they have a list of, or they're like you do, acquisition editor who's checking out manuscripts all day long, but they're looking for the big hits, not for the helping somebody go from 0 to 100.
I'd say, Paul, there's really three kinds of areas here. There's self-publishing, like we've been talking about. Then there's traditional publishing, which is like Random House, so the big 5 publishers, and then in the middle are what we call independent publishers. And so there's sort of a mixture of both. You have a lot more control, like with a Morgan James, as opposed to going to a Random House. The author's viewpoint is held in higher esteem and all that, but yet you're working with a team to really get your book out there in the right kind of way.
Right. And so, and then what is the role of the literary agent? Do people need, or are there times when you pitch it for an agent before you go to a publishing house, or is that a necessary step? How does it work?
Yeah, you don't have, like at Morgan James, only about 30% of our authors have a literary agent. So you don't have to have an agent with us, but if you have one, that's okay too. Agents, often are gatekeepers to help you refine your idea, make sure your pitch is going to be good, all that kind of stuff. So they form a very important role in the process, but it's sometimes harder to get a literary agent than it is to get published.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. You're pitching the agent quite often, right?
It is.
Right. So going back to subject matter, I mean, almost all the books behind me are books that are written by dads, and I was saying, dads of the mothers of invention, or dads of the fathers of invention, or whatever. But quite often, there are a lot of men out there who end up designing a stroller or baby bottles or something based on their experience of fatherhood, because it's just so consuming in their lives at that time. And a lot of these books are they're memoirs of dads with kids. They're gay dads who are explaining their experience. They're men who are giving nuts and bolts and product reviews, all kinds of different things. And I'm curious as to well, in that world, I suppose a lot of these guys have came up with the idea and then they wanted to publish it. But then there are probably other guys who just are looking like, they're thinking legacy, kind of like, how do I capture something that would be meaningful to keep as a story, maybe help other people understand things, or where they get started, and how would somebody, if they just have a vague idea, I've always wanted to write a book. What kind of advice would you give them, that, like, from somebody who just has a fantasy tuning in versus already got something going?
I think no matter where they are in the process, from my perspective, it starts with writing what we call a book proposal in the business.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially your business plan. Whether you self-publish or whether you go with a traditional publisher, whether you pitch with an agent, you're going to need a plan. And so years ago, Paul, as a frustrated acquisitions editor at a publishing house, I wrote this book called Book Proposals That Sell: 21 Secrets to Speed Your Success. Now, the book has over 150 five-star reviews. It's helped a lot of people find an agent, get an advance, all that kind of stuff. But my book publishing has changed a lot through the years, is what I'd say. And so a couple of years ago, I completely revised my book, and I've got a revised edition of that book out there. People can go to bookproposals.ws, and you can get a free copy of my Book Proposals That Sell. Just put in your name, your email address, say what kind of format you want, and you get that. Now, why do you think I'd be giving away the ebook version of my book? We give away at Morgan James because we've learned something that's almost counterintuitive here. If you get that ebook version of my Book Proposals book and start to read that, there's a high probability that you're going to turn and buy the print copy of the book.
Oh, right.
So really, those giving away those ebook versions, you lose nothing as an author. It can actually drive print sales. A few years ago, I was listening to the Marcus Duhay, the CEO of Penguin Random House, and he was saying that when ebooks came out, we thought they were going to take over print. But that never happened, and it's really not going to happen, because now, here's years later, statistically worldwide, it's like 80% print and 20% ebook. So we don't have to worry that our printed books are going to disappear. They're going to stay around here.
You believe so? Because it seems like reading is really decreasing, and the number of people who read, well, certainly novels, seems to be decreasing. But is the market somewhat stabilized now versus the drop when the internet came?
I think it is. I mean, sure, you have to, as an author, you have to find your audience and be doing something to be telling people about your book. I mean, there are literally thousands of books that are published every day, so it's very competitive. But if you're actively doing something as an author, like even those magazine articles that I was talking about before, if you write a little magazine article and publish it somewhere, at the bottom of the magazine article, you can say Terry Whalin, author of 10 publishing myths. And They think, oh my goodness, I better track that down, find out what that is. That's a good thing for you to do as an author.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people also think about book publishing just to have that credential, to add, like, I coach, and it would be certainly nice if I had a book that was written, like how I, saved 100 people's relationship with their kids. To have a book would be a big thing. If you wanted to write a book just so you could have that title, would you think it's more, how would you go about it? Would you make sure that the book was good first, or would you make sure that you had a successful title and a niche that would look best on your resume? I'm just wondering about whether
it's kind of both. You have, a book does give you the authority. It's a door opener. It allows you to be able to speak places. You're an authority on whatever you've written a book about. But you want to have a good title. You want to have good content in there. So, I always encourage people to, go find an outside editor, not somebody that's going to charge you a fortune, find somebody that's going to be a reasonable outside editor. I mean, I was talking to a doctor the other day, and he was working with some hotshot editor that was charging him like $500 a chapter. It's like, whoa, you're really getting taken here. Is what I'm thinking when I talk
Is he
to
writing
somebody
it
like
for
that.
him?
Yeah, find somebody that's reasonable in your network, and there's lots of really great people out there that can help you shape it. And even as much stuff as I've written, I always work with somebody before I turn in my stuff, so I make sure it's as good as it possibly can be before I turn it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the quality part is really important. Is there a minimum number of words or pages? Because here, this book is pretty jam-packed with advice, but it's not, it's not 400 pages. It's 139 pages. But I do see some people who are pitching books, they call them, but when you download their book, it's like 12 pages of,
Right.
of very large print. I'm like, that's not really a book.
Yeah, well,
I don't know if that enhanced
most books are spine out like this in the
Right,
bookstore,
right.
so it has to be thick enough. I would say at least 25,000 words would be a minimum, but for most nonfiction books, I would say 50 to 60,000 words is really a good range. That's like a 200-page paperback book at the end of the day.
Yeah. And then how about fiction? Is fiction still alive? Is it still a venue?
It's alive and well,
I
Paul.
know
People are reading
fantasy is
those
like,
romance, thrillers, uh, suspense, all different kinds of genres. It just again, it's a matter of crafting the right story, finding the right readers. But yeah, those things are actively going out there.
yeah. Yeah, that is an area that mystifies me. I've written a lot of short stories, but telling stories well and knowing how to, especially a longer form, a novel. I know they say short stories are harder than novels to write, but telling a long form story is really a challenge for a lot of people. Okay, so I did have a question here that I thought was going to be good, but I'll come back. Maybe I'll come back to it. Uh, well, maybe that was it. Is if you wanted to write a book today, if you wanted to start today, what would be the things you should take into consideration? I'm just wondering, would it be best to like join a book writing group or hire somebody to help you generate ideas? Or if you wanted to really, if 2025 was your year, you wanted to publish a book by the end of this year, how would you start today?
Well,
So many ways.
I would start with the book proposal that we were talking about before. That's a good place no matter where you're going to start. But getting in the community, like you're saying, is always a good idea. So find a local writers conference, find a local writers group. They're all over the country. Find one that's going to work for you. Hook up with a buddy to have an accountability partner to say, okay, you want to do this, are you on track? A couple weeks later, check in, have somebody to check in with. All those things kind of help you keep you pushing along in the process to actually get it done.
And are there coaches out there who do that? I mean, in general, in coaching, we say, I say I can coach anybody how to do anything. And the big value of coaching is that accountability partner is checking in with every. I know I run Pregnancy Magazine, and when we relaunched that magazine, I acquired the assets and wanted to relaunch the magazine. I got a coach, and he just offered me some amount of advice because he was from the publishing world, but mostly he asked me questions and kept me on track week to week to actually do the things that I said I was going to do. Do you know of good coaches who work like that?
There are writing coaches that you could Google and find writing coaches, and they're depending on what you want to do. But yes, there are these people that'll work with you for a season and keep you on track and ask questions and all that kind of stuff. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess the big worry that I have in a lot of the things that we've talked about is finding the right people for any of these different things and making sure you're not throwing money away or throwing time away or not finding the right expertise. And maybe that's just the problem with, finding a plumber too. It's just how do you go about finding the right people? And it's probably the same Googling, Yelp reviews, all the other tools we have at our disposal.
It is because in any kind of thing, even at Morgan James, for example, we receive 5,000 submissions a year and only do about 200 books. So there's definitely a sorting process where we're looking for the right authors and the right fit. Uh, and it's disappointing to me sometimes, Paul, if I'm honest, because I'm attached to some of these authors, and they take a look at what we do at Morgan James and they write me and say, well, I don't think that's the right thing for me. And I'm like, well, okay, wish you all the best.
Yeah.
come back when you're ready, type thing.
Well, that's nice that they have the luxury
of the process,
Yeah, it looks nice. They have the luxury of being able to choose. When I worked at Random House, I worked at Knopf, and I was like a first reader. And I mean, I saw manuscripts that were horrible. I saw ones that were so over the top intellectual that nobody, with an IQ under 150 could have ever even, gotten past to the first page. And and some in the middle that were really good that made it on to the editors to check out. But having the luxury of actually turning away your agent or your publisher it sounds like a good one to me.
Yeah, it's definitely a process, a journey for all of us to find that right fit. I mean, people forget, Paul, that even those Chicken Soup for the Soul books were rejected over 160 times till they finally found somebody that was going to publish their book. Yeah. So it's definitely a process and a journey that we're all on to try to find the right place for our work.
Yeah, I know there are a lot of those stories in the publishing world of the ones that got away. Like I guess in every industry. So in the book, so we've got the 10 publishing myths, and you kind of go through their kind of really very specific, helpful stuff. But then you talk about and you can get a copy of the book and shipped to you free at publishingoffer.com, which describes the book. In the book, on the page you talk about there are a whole bunch of bonus things that you can get if you buy the book online versus getting on an Amazon or wherever else it's sold. What are those other $200 worth of bonuses?
There are a lot of audio products. For example, one of my friends has sold thousands of books to libraries, and so you get the audio recording with all the specifics as far as how in the world he did that. So there's over $200 worth of free bonuses that you get from me if you buy the book directly from me for only $10 at publishingoffer.com is a good place to find out about that. But I think you were getting at, Paul, I think you were about ready to talk about the 11th myth is where, because Alice Kreider, who's an acquisitions editor, when she sent me back her endorsement, she said, Terry, you're missing the 11th myth. I'm like, okay, Alice, what's the 11th myth? She said, well, the 11th myth should be that if I send my book to Oprah Winfrey, she'll book me on her show. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's a pretty big myth. And so what I decided to do with that chapter is I wrote that chapter. And when we designed the book, I designed that chapter to look like the rest of the book. And people can get that for free from me if they go to terrylinks.com /11th myth /11th myth. And that'll take you to a little website. You put your name and your email address in, then you get the 11th myth for free from me. So just another tool that I'm using to help people learn about the book out there.
Yeah, it sounds like part of your strategy though too, based on that, is that you have a lot of websites that are landing pages that describe what your book is and have another author. I that just seems so modern that everybody does that. I mean, at one time maybe that would have seemed like real salesy or something, but it's now just part of the many tools. The question I was groping for before is how important is it to have that kind of infrastructure behind your book idea? Like I own GreatDad.com, I have PregnancyMagazine.com, I have a bunch of other assets, and going into it would be a logical marketing platform to market anything that I came up with. But people who don't have that and they're starting from scratch, do they need a website? Do they how for a while there you were hearing like publishers only will publish your book if they know that you are or you're ready to do a nationwide tour. You've got all these networks already. You're willing to spend $50,000 of your own money on advertising. Is that the case today? Are there big
Well,
barriers to entry?
they do want to see that you have an online presence and you have numbers. And I talk to authors all the time, Paul. They'll say that, well, I have a YouTube audience, or I build my audience on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Well, those platforms are nice, don't get me wrong, and I use those platforms too. But in the business, we call those rented platforms
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because I don't control
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah.
I
Well,
could knowingly or unknowingly get kicked off LinkedIn tomorrow for some reason.
yeah.
So I always encourage people to build this stuff on something that they can control.
I
I mean,
totally
we
agree.
control our own website, our own blog, our own newsletter. Those are all assets that we have a say over what happens to them and how they go out.
Yeah, I from personal experience, I cannot tell you how much I distrust, especially Zuckerberg's properties, because he will take advantage of you as far as you can go, and then he will turn off the very thing that he sold you on spending lots of money to develop. He will turn it off in a second and leave you without even an explanation. So that'd be my advice on investing heavily, like you say, in any of the other platforms. If you invest in
Right.
your own website and that develops and gets to any notoriety, that's far more valuable than something that could disappear tomorrow, because lots of people have lost everything with changes of platforms or Google SEO.
Absolutely. My wake up experience, Paul, in this area was in 2007. I was a literary agent in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Mark Victor Hansen, the co-author on Chicken Soup for the Soul, was having this event in Los Angeles called Mega Book Marketing University. He invited me to come, and I took pitches from people out there. But while I was there, I sat with 400 people and listened to all the different speakers. And at that point in my life, I'd written about 50 books for traditional publishers. I had advances and all that kind of thing. And when you're in that market, publishers sometimes once a year, sometimes quarterly, will send you a financial statement about how your book is doing out there. All of mine were in the minus category. None of them were selling. And so I really couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong while I was there.
Right.
So about halfway through that workshop, it was almost like I'd been asleep and I woke up, because I realized personally how little I was doing to be telling other people about my own books. I mean, sure, I had a Whalin.com website, but I wasn't doing hardly anything else. So I started blogging, and they say there's over 600 million blogs that are out there. So there's a lot of blogs, but I have this thing that searches for my name out there. And about a year ago, I found this article that listed the top 27 content producers out there. Well, I was one of the top 27, along with, Ryan Holiday and Seth Godin and people like that. It's because, for years now, I write a blog article every week. And I send it out. So I have over 1,700 entries in my blog. I mean, there's a lot of content in that thing.
Yeah.
And it helps a lot of people out there. So, I think anybody can do that. Hey, the way I look at it is, if I started something from scratch and it became that, you can also start something from scratch. Just do it, and do it over and over. And, people look at these blogs, you kind of wonder what you can do with that stuff. Well, I have a book that I did called Jumpstart Your Publishing Dreams. And that really the content from that came from my blog, because if in the business, we call that a blook, because that content came from a blog originally. But I mean, it is a lot of work to take your random thoughts in your blog and sort of organize those into a chapter, write transitions, all that kind of thing. But that's another way that you can start to generate content that ultimately can become your 50,000 word book.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. I mean, there's so many ways to do that too. Other like podcasts are a perfect opportunity. A lot of my podcasts with dads who are a little bit more in the zone of parenting right now, I ask them questions on what things they've learned that they would want to share, or what are their greatest regrets or whatever. And if you do enough of those podcasts, you come up with pages and pages of good advice from people who've actually been there before. And that goes for any domain. You can collect information, collect articles pretty quickly.
And it's like you were saying earlier, it's the stories that people are going to remember.
Yeah, if you can tell, more than the advice is the story that goes with the advice. Well, Terry, thank you very much for spending some time with me. I've always been interested in the publishing world. I guess I've been in the publishing world for quite a while myself, but not in the same realm you have. And I've never gotten a book out, though. That is a big fantasy of mine. So I will be going again through 10 publishing myths for some more.
And if I can ever help you, Paul, you know how to reach me. A lot of these people in publishing, it's sad, but they're very inaccessible to people. And so I try to be one of the most accessible people in the publishing community. That's why I have my personal email address is right in my X profile. I'm on LinkedIn. I answer my email. I answer my phone. I mean, it's unusual. You'd think that's a simple thing that everybody would do, but they don't out there.
Very true. Very true. All right. Very good. So again, publishingoffer.com, check it out. And finish up. You can find my coaching. I'm happy to coach people on writing books. So that is not my expertise. I'm a good accountability partner, but you can find my coaching offerings at GreatDad.com/go. So until next time, stay strong.